Morning, all. All right, so we are up to the 1955-1956 season, and as you can see, there are actual changes in the standings that year. Montreal is now number one, so they've been slowly climbing up towards Detroit in the standings, and they just absolutely destroyed them this year, getting to the 100-point mark. Montreal finishes 45-15-10 under rookie head coach Toe Blake. Toe Blake, a huge part of Montreal's dynasty that has come in here. 222 goals scored, 131 goals against. So absolutely ridiculous numbers from Montreal. They were 29-5-1 at home and 16-10-9 away from home. The Detroit Red Wings finished second in the league, 76 points, a record of 30-24-16. 183 goals scored, 148 goals against, still coached by Jimmy Skinner. They were 21-6-8 at home, 9-18-8 away from home. So the road was a problem. As it was for the New York Rangers, who finished 32-28-10, 74 points. They're third in the league, 204 goals scored, 203 goals against. They're coached by Phil Watson. We will talk about him when we get to this portion of the board. They were 27-8 at home. They were 12-21-2 away from home. In fact, the only team that was really good away from home is Montreal. Toronto, 24-33-13, so a 61-point season for them under coach King Clancy. 153 goals scored, 181 goals against. They were 19-10-6 at home, 5-23-7 away from home. So only 5 wins on the road out of 35. For Boston, they finished 23-34-13, so they missed the playoffs by 2 points with 59. 147 goals scored, 185 goals against. They're coached by Milt Schmidt. 14-14-7 home record, 9-20-6 away from home for the Boston Bruins. Chicago, another rough year. Under Dick Irvin in what would prove to be his final season coaching at the National Hockey League level. 19-39-12 record for Chicago, so 50 points. 155 goals scored, 216 goals against. They were about the same at home as they were on the road. 9-19-7 at home, 10-20-5 away from home. So 25 points at home, 25 points on the road, and they missed the playoffs by 11 points. So June 3rd of 1955, a massive trade takes place well before this season gets started, and it shocks the hockey world because Terry Sawchuk's part of the trade. Detroit trades Terry Sawchuk, Vic Stasiuk, Marcel Bonin, and Lauren Davis to the Bruins in exchange for Riel Chevrefils, Ed Sanford, Norm Corcoran, Jill Boisvert, and Warren Godfrey. So a lot of names in there. The one to keep track of is Sawchuk. Sawchuk no longer a Red Wing. Detroit knew something, though, because they start playing Glenn Hall. On October 6th of 1955, Hall starts what would be the first of a 502 game, consecutive games played streak, which for a goaltender, nobody's ever getting anywhere close to that one. October 13th of 1955, the Habs signed Maurice Richard's brother, Henri. Henri Richard, a fiery personality like his brother, and will become part of a pretty dominant Montreal team. The Rangers improve under new head coach Phil Watson, which is very notable because the Rangers were having some tough times for a decade before this. Referees start using the hand signals for penalties that are used to this day. So they start working on the different hand signals. They get it all figured out. March 18th of 1956, Bert Olmsted records his 56th assist, which sets an NHL record. So again, the points and the goals and the assists, not quite the kinds of records that Gretzky would set many years later, but it's a 70-game season. It's the original 6. Understandable. Goal scoring not where it was going to be once we get to the 80s. The Habs lighting up penalty kills around the league. So the NHL notices that Montreal scoring multiple times per power play, and so they decide to make it so that once you score on the power play, the penalty ends. Yep, up until then, if you scored on the power play, you remained on the power play for the full 2 minutes. Didn't matter how many goals you scored. But since Montreal was abusing the system by how dare they score multiple goals, then they changed the league rules because Montreal was too good at it. And it's not the last time that they're going to do that either. I think it's the only time with Montreal to speak of, but I know with the Oilers in the 80s, there's a rule change that was made because they were, taking advantage of 4-on-4 play. So the NHL made it so that offsetting penalties did not lead to 4-on-4. The suspicion being Edmonton was doing it on purpose to get that extra room out there. It's just so weird. So December 29th of 1955, referees and linesmen start wearing the jerseys that they wear now, the sweaters that they wear now, the black and white stripes. Prior to that, they had orange and black, and it just looked black on black and white TV, so they had to make that change. The Wings had 7 years at the top of the league, which ends with this one where they end up finishing second, of course. November 5th of 1955, Jean Beliveau, no relation to Jacques Beliveau, no idea where that came from, but Jean Beliveau scores 3 goals in 44 seconds, all on the same power play in a 4-2 win against the Bruins. So it's that kind of play that makes the NHL say, all right, we're going to have to make it so one power play goal ends a power play, because that's not fair. When it's completely fair, of course it's fair. Hockey Night in Canada broadcasts. So this would have been maddening, right? They don't show full games on TV until 1968-69. They will often join the game while it's in progress. They broadcast the full game on the radio, but even though it's Hockey Night in Canada, you're going to be joining a game while it's going on, or you might leave before the game is done. I'm old enough to remember when you'd be watching a game and you'd hear, due to previously scheduled programming, we can't show you the end of this game, and it didn't end well. Eventually, broadcasters realized we can't be not showing overtime, and that's what was happening. I can remember games going into multiple overtimes, and all of a sudden it was, we're out of time. We can't show that. So, Hockey Night in Canada at that point, not what it was going to become. So your Hart Trophy winner that year is Jean Beliveau. He also wins the Art Ross Trophy, and of course, he's of the Montreal Canadiens. The Calder Trophy goes to Glenn Hall of the Detroit Red Wings. The Norris Trophy goes to Doug Harvey again of the Montreal Canadiens. The Vezina goes to Jacques Plante in Montreal. And the Lady Byng goes to Earl Reibel in Detroit. Your all-stars around the NHL, first and second team at center, Jean Beliveau of Montreal's first team, Ted Sloan of the Toronto Maple Leafs' second team. On the right side, it's Richard and Howe, but they're switched now. Richard's the first-line all-star. That's Maurice Richard. And Gordie Howe of Detroit, the second-team all-star. Left wing, Ted Lindsay again is the first-team all-star. Bert Olmsted of the Montreal Canadiens is second team. On the blue line, Doug Harvey is a first-team all-star for Montreal. And Bill Gadsby of the New York Rangers, also first team. Second-team all-stars, Red Kelly of Detroit and Tom Johnson of the Montreal Canadiens. In goal, Jacques Plante for Montreal is the first-team all-star, and Glenn Hall of Detroit is the second-team all-star. So Jean Beliveau, as mentioned, Art Ross winner. He had 88 points that year in 70 games, 47 goals, 41 assists. Gordie Howe of Detroit, 70 games, 38 goals, 41 assists, 79 points for Gordie Howe. Sorry, had to pause. Allergies. Maurice Richard of Montreal, 70 games, 38 goals, 33 assists, 71 points. Bert Olmsted of Montreal as well. 70 games, 14 goals, 56 assists for 70 points. Ted Sloan in Toronto, 70 games, 37 goals, 29 assists, 66 points. And Andy Bathgate of the New York Rangers makes his debut on the board for this series. 70 games, 19 goals, 47 assists, 66 points. And Andy Bathgate, part of the reason why the New York Rangers make their move up in the standings. In net, Jacques Plante ends up with a record of 42, 12, and 10. 1.86 goals against average and 7 shutouts. Gump Worsley, or Lorne Worsley in New York, 32, 28, and 10 record, 2.84 goals against average and 4 shutouts. Glenn Hall in Detroit, 30, 24, and 16, 2.1 goals against and 12 shutouts. Terry Sawchuk in Boston, 22, 33, and 13, 2.6 goals against average, 9 shutouts. And Harry Lumley in Toronto, 21, 28, and 10 record, 2.7 goals against, 3 shutouts. So you get to the playoffs, and in the semifinals, it is the Montreal Canadiens against the New York Rangers, Toronto against Detroit, as Boston misses the playoffs, so they don't have to worry about losing to Montreal. Montreal makes kind of quick work of the Rangers in the first round. They win 7-1 at home. They lose the second game 4-2 at home, but then they go to New York. They win 3-1 and 5-3, and then they win 7-0 at home in Game 5 to close the series out 4-1. Toronto and Detroit. Detroit wins the first 2 games at home, 3-2 and 3-1 respectively. Detroit then wins Game 3 in Toronto in overtime, the only overtime game of those playoffs, 5-4. Toronto does win Game 4 to stave off elimination, win that game 2-0, but then Detroit wins Game 5 3-1, so that series is done in 5. The Stanley Cup final goes in that same sort of vein of 5 games. Montreal wins the first 2 games by scores of 6-4 and 5-1. Detroit wins the third game at home 3-1, and then Montreal wins 3-0 in Game 4 before going home and winning 3-1 in Game 5 to win that series in 5 games and the Stanley Cup. Beliveau leads the scoring in the playoffs, 10 games, 12 goals, 7 assists, 19 points. Boom Boom Geoffrion, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points in 10 games. Rocket Richard had the exact same numbers, and Bert Olmsted, 4 goals, 10 assists for 14 points in those same 10 games. Jacques Plante had a 1.8 goals against average in those playoffs, and the runner-up goaltender, Glenn Hall, had a 2.78 goals against average in those playoffs. So, pretty entertaining. Montreal's back at the top. Montreal's going to be at the top a bunch between now and 1979. But hey, stay tuned. Watch for those. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.